Hello everyone, this is the UR65. Featuring 603 17,000 kV motors, an F3 flight controller with an OSD. The flight controller also features a 5 amp 4-in-1 ESC and the FrSky receiver, a 25 milliwatt 48 channel VTX, a 700 TV line camera. It weighs just over 20 grams. Motor post to motor post, I'm getting 64 millimeters, just like this. Comes with a fairly interesting 250 milliamp 1S battery, an extra set of props, some rubber bands, a screws, a prop remover, and a screwdriver. Fold out instructions, a USB battery charger, and a box you can pack it in. For those that might be curious, this is the angle of the camera that I used in the teaser clip, that 30 to 35 second clip. I did screw down this screw a little bit in the back to lean the whole canopy back, and then I used the 2 screw holes in this interesting little canopy with a mount built into it. And I think it's pretty close to maxed out, but you can see I've got a couple of wires trapped into there. So if I had enough wire length, I might be able to get those. But you can control your flight speed by using the camera tilt. At least I like to. So where you always have the horizon or level in the center of your screen. Of course, if you're used to it or you just choose to, you can fly just at the top view of your camera, say the top 30% to where the top 30% would be in your level or your horizon. And that's a way to naturally kind of control your speed, is to just use your camera. So if you're curious, the receiver, it's right on board. We've got this single antenna, and it does look to be fairly substantial. I've seen much smaller antennas, and I've seen connection points in the boards much smaller in cases where the receiver is included. I really don't have anything to complain about. One of the concerns that I oftentimes have is with these tiny little screws and the mounting, but it has stood up to all my crashes. Especially when I was doing all those speed runs, I would slam into stuff for about all I was worth, and I really haven't had any negative impacts. I don't see any stress marks. I haven't seen any marks on the props to indicate they have taken a beating or been bent in any way. Everything's just held together pretty nicely, and quite frankly, I've had probably somewhere between 40 and 70 flights on this thing. I've got a box of these 1S batteries, and I would just charge them all up and run them. And speaking of charging, if you don't already have a 1S charger, this is one I've been using. I've been very happy with it. You'll find it down below in the kind of the stuff I use. Dirt cheap. I think I saw this last for $26 or $27. It does standard and high volt, and then you have all these other different connections as well. It is a little bit wonky, or at least my edition of it is. You light the channels, you hit the channel button to light these up, and sometimes I think you get it to this one, and when you go to this one, it actually skips it or goes here or something like that, to where when you want to select the next one, it doesn't necessarily follow the sequence. And then you long press to start and stop, and you can increase and decrease the rate at which you charge. Again, pretty simple, pretty cheap, but has been working for me for probably 6 months or more. I did notice initially I had some yaw twitches after putting everything back together, and I loosened my screws all a little bit, and I noticed that the yaw twitches went away. So if you find that yours kind of has that quick jerk or snap every once in a while, it's not very consistent, and it doesn't seem to affect angle mode flying. But if you have that, just loosen up the screws a little bit. Hopefully that works out for you too. I have the Snapper 7 right here. I'll review that soon. That's been reviewed. It's probably made by the same company, but this one's Happy Model branded. It's got Happy Model motors, and this one can carry a larger battery. It's a larger vehicle. But in my case with this one, which it has the same camera, I had to replace the camera because it was faulty. I could only get about 12 feet away from me before I would have video signal issues. Also, I noticed this one, I can't remember what channel it came on by default, but if you get some weirdness on screen with the camera, you can test by changing the band. That's the first thing I would say. Jump onto the A channel and just do A1 and see if that you can pick that up and that's clear, because that can also look like a faulty camera, because I saw some various strange things on screen. As far as the teaser run goes, I can only pull that off for probably about a minute 20. I think I had one might have gone a minute 25 or a minute 30, and that's why I just put together a little teaser clip. Many of you probably saw that same clip on Facebook. So, you might be a skilled enough pilot to where you can pull a full pack at that rate, but I cannot. At least not today, not yet. It was sure a lot of fun. I think that's the thing about this one that I enjoyed the most, is it was just pure and simple, easy to fly fun. I didn't fuss with the PIDs all that much. I'm not far off the defaults. You could definitely get better. You'll notice that in the fuller flight, or even in that little teaser flight, that there is some prop wash, especially on hard 180 turns when you're carrying speed. You could sort that out if you like. I think we're limited as to how effective PID tuning is going to be, because these aren't torquey motors by any stretch. So if you're looking to do really quick movements, quicker than maybe you've seen in the video, that might be a bit of a stretch for this particular machine. Also, the current meter, I did not calibrate that or tweak it in any way. I actually, initially when I flew it, I actually disabled that stuff in the OSD, and I thought, well, people want to know and want to see that, so I put it back on, but I didn't calibrate it. But I'm sure it works, so I'm sure we can get that dialed in. I'm sure Joshua Bardwell has got a video on that. As you saw in the full flight footage, my flight time was about 2 minutes and 20 seconds, but I do change the minimum cell and the cell warning settings on mine, as you see on screen. I haven't found that to be a problem. I fly with various 1S batteries. I couldn't tell you exactly which battery was in that particular flight because I just charge them up and then I run them. But here's a look at some of the batteries that I have used in flying this machine. This is just kind of a handful I grabbed. If you're not comfortable with those battery settings, feel free to do your own by all means. That's just how I run them. Running them like that, I have only puffed one particular battery that I can recall. There may have been others, but it's far enough back to where I just don't remember. And that was a newbie drone battery, or nitro nectar battery. I bought a pack of 6 of these, and these work quite well. I'm not hammering on the fact that only one of these puffed. I bought a pack of 6, and the other 5 are still in operation today. So you may want to keep your settings like what I have there, or you may want to change them depending upon how you want your batteries to be set up and to be treated. While we're talking about batteries, I want to mention something that I really didn't talk about much in 2 previous reviews. It does not come with this kit, is this tiny battery meter. LDRC, they send these out with their tiny 8s, tiny 7s, tiny 6s. And I initially didn't think much of it. I just thought, oh, cute, little battery checker, whatever. but I really like it. And maybe it's just kind of a nerdy thing. So this one's flat. You probably can't see it down here, but there's different voltages written at the lower part. So all these lights indicate a voltage. How accurate it is, I don't know. Oh, and this one's fully charged. You know, we've got 4.3 there. They're also written on the other side. So if you had it around this way, those voltages are written here. So I don't know. I like that. It's kind of a geeky thing. You can also check older batteries. Here's an older battery. So we have the other end there with the original. I think it was the pH 1.25. Ooh, not much. This one's pretty flat. I haven't been flying these in a long time, so it's not a big concern of mine. Let's check this one real quick. Now, well, he's a little bit better. Not flashing, just solid down there. And let's check one more just for fun. I'm going to get that. There we go. This one's fully charged. So if I can find this, I'll link it down below as well. There could be other 1S battery checkers out there, and I just missed them. I just thought this was awful kind of neat and cute and dead simple and small, which simple and small is something I appreciate because I deal almost exclusively in micros. You're going to be able to repair this stuff. So if we do have some of these little breakages that happen at these joints or at the struts around the bottom, we will be able to repair that. I use a welder, and I've been using this on a lot of different plastics. It takes a long time to set. I think it says 12 hours. Usually I just let it sit overnight. And this tube has lasted me, I don't know, it's been 10 months or something like that. And it's pretty cheap. I bought a pack of 2 tubes off of Amazon, and I can link that down below. But this stuff works pretty well because it doesn't bond solid. It stays stretchy. So if you do put some in a little crack or something that you have here, it'll still bend and flex with the machine. And I think that bend and the flex is probably what gives it its durability. And it's the same thing it gives its durability with traditional tiny hoops and their frames. As far as flashing this, the instructions are actually quite straightforward. They did a nice job here. Right here, the binding procedure, it states here that you power it on, and then you'll have 2 red and 2 white LEDs that will be blinking slowly, and those come from the bottom is my recollection with the USB port. And then you press this little tiny button. It's right up about here on the flight controller. We can't quite, it's so stinking small. Can you see that? I think that's it right there. It's hard to see. But anywho, so let's look at the picture. Maybe the picture will do a better job of showing us what it looks like here. But so you press that binding button, and then it goes from blinking slowly to solid. That gives you your indicator for flash or for binding, and then you have the rest of the instructions. You don't, by default, mine were set up here out of the box, so you don't have to change these things unless you got a different sort of receiver, and it's got, you know, the included Tyrannus pictures as well. And it talks about the camera and the channel mapping, things of that nature. It does talk about something right here that I thought was fairly interesting. And I'll just read this verbatim, but note they're talking about the PID loop frequency. The receiver signal will be unstable while the MSP connection, connect to Betaflight connection established. A little bit of broken English there, but we get the point. The PID loop frequency must be at 2 kilohertz at this firmware version. Will update soon. So if you plan on changing that when you get yours, I suggest not doing that or being prepared to reverse that if you get unintended consequences. And the backside of the instructions kind of show a few things. They show a charger here. I think you can get this in advanced versions, and I'll link down below the different versions. They have the different batteries here, and it's also got the included charger, and it's got a little map of the board if you're curious about the pinout. And it shows you both sides as well. So pretty thorough instructions. Even shows you the ESC stuff. We got the BL Heli suite here. We got the virtual COM port driver. So pretty comprehensive single sheet. And we've got our motor direction. It's really, you know, in a one pager front and back. It's colored. It's printed quite well. I appreciate this stuff because so oftentimes you can get a machine and it's got nothing with it and you've just got to figure it out. And I don't think that's right. The battery is a little bit of an interesting bugger, and you do kind of need this lead on here. Unfortunately, I don't know where else we're going to find this other than off of Banggood. So we're going to have to either buy these, but really you don't need to. One of the things I did, I've been flying all my various batteries. I've got a few samples out here. I just took the battery, shoved it all the way in forward, kind of angled things here, just work it gently, set it down and go fly. And these wires aren't even that tight. The negative is a little bit, but if I had that on the other side of this screw, probably when I took the canopy off, I tried to split it as you normally do. That would actually be a benefit. My negative wire would then be a little bit looser. And if you're worried about longer batteries, I have a sample here of that as well. Here's our traditional tiny whoop battery made by MyLipo, and this too. This is the longer version. You can tell here if I just do a little sizing real quick, the size difference. And then we have the milliamp per hour rating here on the front. You should be familiar with these batteries if you've been hooping around. Again, slide it in all the way forward. It's the same distance back because the cap is the same size. Get a little angle on this here. Just kind of rotate it down. And go fly. Of course, I don't have my receiver on, so it's flashing, indicating I have a problem. Improvements. Well, I think the two things I can think of, and I kind of thought about this for a bit, is one, I do wish this battery lead was slightly longer so that we could run the longer typical batteries that we use on these, and we wouldn't have to stretch this quite so tight or have it at an angle. So just the tiniest bit longer, but I also wish these gauge wires were a little bit thicker. I do appreciate the fact that they used a connector here that crimps, and rather than it just being the pins that stick out that you solder the leads to. So this connector is fine. I just wish the gauge wire was a little bit thicker. But of course, that's probably going to be one of the simplest upgrades we can do. We can go to tinyhoop.com. We can buy ourselves a new pigtail, cut it to length, because I think the tiny hoop ones come out real nice and long, so we can cut them to length and put them on there. And we may find that there's even a performance increase by doing that. That was one of the things that we saw the rage on this, was when we moved away from the tiny little connectors and we moved into the bigger connectors, that we saw performance increases. So you may also see a slight performance increase in some manner with a little thicker gauge wire as well. The other thing I thought about, which is somewhat popular, is in the brushed versions of these, they have these carbon fiber crosses that go around the brush motors and they slide on. I suppose if you wanted to firm it up, because of course it's got some flex in there, if you wanted to firm your motor position up, somebody could design, it's going to be a little bit of a stretch. I don't think it's going to be an X. I think it's going to be a square because of where we mount our batteries. But somebody could design a plate or something real thin, 1 millimeter. Hopefully it doesn't come in over more than a gram to help kind of stiffen up their motor positions. They would need to source screws because we probably would need a little bit longer screw, and getting these sort of screws, I doubt they're very common. I've got a kit, but who wants to buy a whole kit when you just need a couple of screws? So just for our final comparison here, this is the original Inductrix. This is a rack on Heli. This is the 66, I believe. We've got the Snapper 7, but there's also a Snapper 6 version. And then we've got the B-Whoop from Bold Clash. This is the B06. Now, of my favorite, absolutely favorite indoor brushless flyers, it's this one. And this is the rack on 76. It's got 1102 motors, but it runs 2S. So I don't really put it in the same category for comparison, but if somebody asks, this is still my favorite. It has much more torque, it has much more power, and it's just, because of the type of flying I do, this is what I look for. But this is heavier, so you can knock trinkets or do possible damage to things in your home with something like this versus something that weighs 20 grams like the UR65. So this one, if you buy this from Rack on Heli without the camera already built, I believe that was running close to $200. It might have been $180. I can't hardly remember right in the moment. But it came with similar motors. You don't get a canopy with it, and of course you don't get a camera. This was a build that was done, and it was done by Adam Douglas. If you're looking for somebody to build you something, he's a good guy to look up. And this flies really well, and at the time it was one of my favorites. The B-Whoop 06, this one that I have has the upgraded motors. They sent me some extra parts, so the motor bells should stay on. They did some sort of solder or laser tacking on the motor stem to help keep those motor bells on. This also has the upgraded flight controller that has the OSD built in. So this is very comparison outside of size to this one, but it's just much bigger. Now this one is a lot of fun too. It carries a bigger battery, yields a much longer flight time, but I still like this one more. I like this one more than all these that you see out here in front of you, and I've had a lot of different indoor brushless ones that I've built and that I've bought. I can put the playlist in the top right hand corner. I think I've had 17 or 18 indoor brushless micro quads for review. I've probably droned on too long. You've probably all run off to buy one of these yourself. Hopefully it's not sold out and you can have some fun. Post your flight footage. I enjoy watching other people's clips on Facebook groups and stuff like that. I think we need to share as much, whether you think you're going fast or you think you're going slow. If you're proud of something, post it. Hold your hand up high and let people know what you're doing, and share the fun of this, because quite frankly, I've said this many times on the channel, this hobby is about fun. There's very little money to be made, and it's going to be made by the top 1%. And it's just not going to be you and me, probably. It might be a few guys out there that you already know their names, but it's it's mainly about fun. RC has always had its roots in fun. We might have competitions, we might have DRL, but we should all just have fun. Relax a bit and have fun. Okay, extended rant there about fun. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.